Good evening and welcome to THST Official, the podcast for the Tottenham Hotspur Supporters Trust. My name is Martin Buhagiar and I'm joined by our usuals, Rob White and Rachel Martin. We're also joined this evening by Steve Cavalier, who's our THST Official Secretary. Good evening, Steve. And Koonal Shah, who's a new board member. So welcome to you both.
Hello.
Thank you. We're going to come to you both as well for a bit of an introduction because it's your first time on the podcast. So we will do that shortly. We're recording this on, was it Tuesday night, 2 days after we beat Newcastle 5-1, and a day after we've seen Arsenal slump to a 3-0 defeat to Crystal Palace. But we won't go into that because we don't want to anger anyone, you know. But I'm sure everyone on this podcast will be more than happy to be reminded of those two results. So happy days indeed. One thing I should say is that you're probably watching this on YouTube. If you are, you can also listen to this on Spotify and iTunes. And if you're listening to it on iTunes and Spotify, you can watch it on YouTube. So please check out our channels. They're all listed on our website, THSTofficial.com. And if you have any ideas for future episodes, you can email us, info@THSTofficial.com. You all know the drill by now. You've all been watching us and listening to us for over a year. So hopefully you've got, the how to contact us and why you should off the top of your head. So, but thank you for always for the feedback that we get. What I'm going to do, what we usually do at this point, I'm going to hand over to Rob, who's going to talk to you about how you can join the trust and why it's so important to become a member of the Tottenham Hotspur Supporters Trust. Over to you, Rob.
Thank you, Martin. So basically, the Supporters Trust is we're a voluntary organisation. We come together and we represent Spurs fans to the club, media and national football authorities. We sort of see ourselves as as a bit of a pressure group. We are an organisation that we have links with the Football Supporters Association, and we sort of we represent the voice of the fans. Actually, you can join by if you go to the website, which is THSTofficial.com. On membership, if you just scroll down on the membership at the bottom, there's how to join and join THST now. You can join as a full member for £10 a year. You can join as an associate member, or you can, I've forgotten the other one, but we can.
You can join as a supporters club.
Exactly. You can be. Thank you, Rachel.
Or a junior member or a senior member.
Yeah, junior member or a senior member. So basically, it's about getting involved, helping the voice of the fans get heard. So if you're interested, go to the website and click on the membership and read more there.
Brilliant. Thank you, Rob. And worth noting as well, if you go on our website, you might notice it had a very minor facelift because we did get some feedback that some people didn't like the massive blue button where it said join THST Official, including our co-chair, Martin Cloak. And we've now removed that button. So it's a lot more streamlined and you can see more of the South Stand in all of its glory on our website when you click there. So it's worth popping on just to have a look at that and remind ourselves of how great that South Stand looks when we're all in it. Now on to the two members who are joining us two board members who are joining us for the first time this evening. We'll start with Steve. Steve, you've been with us for just over a year, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right, Martin. That's right.
And you've been voted in as our official secretary because you're organised and you reply to emails, unlike me. So you know that's I guess the highest accolade I can pay to somebody as a disorganised person myself, that you are so organised. But what we wanted to talk to you about, Steve, is also why Spurs. So just for people listening, you know, it's always nice to hear why people support Spurs, and then why you joined the THST official board and your areas of responsibility that you're working on. So over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Martin, and thank you, everyone. Very pleased to be on the podcast. I'm delighted also to be on the board of THST. I came to Spurs fan when I was a kid. I was a bit of an armchair fan, I must say, initially, when I could persuade my dad to take me along from time to time. I was thinking about this, and I think the first game I went to at White Hart Lane was a 0-0 draw against Wolves, and the only thing I can remember particularly was a great save from Pat Jennings from a volley from Mike Bailey. So that dates it a bit. And I became, I suppose, more obsessed. It took over my life more when I moved to London in the early 80s, and I started going regularly and stood on the Paxton Road end, and went to many games a season. And I got a season ticket in the mid 90s, and I've had a season ticket since then, going to the vast majority of home games. A number of away games, varies from season to season. I think I'm slightly sliding down the loyalty points now, so didn't get into Brentford, but I mean, had some, like many of us, so we had some pretty depressing times, but some great times as well, some fantastic memories. I was lucky enough to be there in Amsterdam and to be there in '91 for the Gaza goal in the semi-final. I think my favourite one, though, just thinking about this, was Glenn Hoddle's last goal at White Hart Lane against Oxford United, when I say he ran through from the halfway line, but he sort of glided through from the halfway line and left their keeper on the deck and put the ball in. And it was his last home game, I think, wasn't it? What a great moment that was. So, and of course, as we were saying at the start, I think we're all feeling on a high after a great result on Sunday and a great performance in that second half, and a great atmosphere. And just, I think we've all really just wanted to have something to get behind. No one wants to be negative about being a Spurs fan. It's just really good to get that feeling. Let's hope that it lasts. And so far as the trust is concerned, I was aware of the work of the trust, and I first did some stuff with Martin Cloak, co-chair, around the when the Spurs fans were prosecuted over the use of the Y word back in, I think, 2013. I wasn't the lawyer involved in that. I'm a lawyer by background, but Martin had asked for some advice from me and my colleagues. I used to head up a national law firm specialising in trade union, workers' rights and personal injury, and I got to know Martin through that, and we had a chat through around those issues. And over the years since then, I helped out a couple of times informally on legal issues and also on political lobbying, because I do quite a lot of stuff politically, and just got more involved through that. And Martin and Kat had asked me from time to time, would I get more involved? I retired from my job back end of 2020, have more time on my hands. I have to say, actually, for those of you who are on the board of the trust and working full-time, how you do it, I just do not know, because I've found it's taken up an immense amount of my time very enjoyably since I came on the board February last year, but I certainly couldn't have done it and a full-time job at the same time. So I've been involved in stuff around fan-led review and football governance, which we'll come on to later. Some of the anti-racism work with Koonal and with Rachel, and also Pete Hayne, who's been a fantastic stalwart on the board, stood down at the AGM in February, and my colleagues very kindly elected me secretary. I think, as you say, probably my main qualification was I do reply to emails, not always accurately or to the right person, but I do reply. So, and it's a big challenge to take on from Pete, who did a great job, but I'm looking forward to it. And it's great to work with people on the trust as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve, and thank you for the work you've done in the last year as well, and for responding as you do and being so organised. So absolutely. One thing I should say, that Hoddle goal is just iconic. There's two Hoddle goals I love. That one and the one, obviously the one against Watford.
Yes,
that I remember going out after that goal against Watford, buying the replica shirt and just trying it constantly in the back garden against my dad's shed. And breaking a window, obviously, as you do. But my dad even came out and said, "You're trying to copy Glenn Hoddle, so I don't even care. If you're going to do it right. So,
have you perfected it yet, Martin?
Do you know what? I scored a goal that I think was very, very similar on a Sunday morning for a pub team called Eddie's Bar. Now, those playing with me would probably say they didn't think it was as similar, but in my head, it looked just like it. And I even did the celebration, fell on my knees afterwards in an empty park.
Glenn would say very much so.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Glenn would have loved it. It was a white kit as well. It was perfect. Yeah. But I think others might tell you it was a bit lucky and maybe it was a cross shot, but who knows? Yeah. Thank you, Steve. Same to you, really, Koonal. And it's one of the things that we had this with Henry when Henry was on as well, because we like Henry and Koonal because they're also bringing the average age of the board down. So that's got to be welcomed. Again, the same to you. And I did say this to Henry. I'm trying to not make it sound like a quiz show. What's your name? Where you're from? And it was a catchphrase we were talking about, wasn't it, at the time? So Koonal, same to you, really. Why Spurs? And then what brings you to the THST official board? And what would you say are your key roles and areas of responsibility?
Sure. Well, before I start, my voice is a little bit raspy from over over chanting and over singing on Sunday. I started following Spurs in the early 1990s. Grew up in suburbs of North London. Kids at my school supported a range of teams. The ones I didn't like all supported Arsenal. And then as I learned a bit about the ethos and the history of Arsenal, I just basically decided I wanted to do the opposite. And I guess as following Spurs in my childhood in the 90s, I didn't really ever know Spurs to be a successful club or a particularly big club. There are plenty of passionate football fans in my family, but I guess until recently there wasn't really that much of a match going culture in my community. So I was a fairly late bloomer when it came to attending matches regularly. Got my first season ticket in Martin Yole's first season in charge, so 2005-06 season. No waiting list back then. I could just choose. Got two next to each other in my choice of block in the Park Lane, different times. And I've been aware of the trust work for a while, kind of always admired them from the outside. And even on the odd occasion when I didn't agree with the stance they took or particularly care about a given issue that they were campaigning on, I always appreciated their efforts in trying to represent and protect supporters. And I thought this is something I really want to be part of. Number of developments, both at the club and in football more generally, that concern me in the last few years, and I just figured that rather than moan about it on social media, I thought I could see if I could help make a difference. In terms of areas that I'm due to be working, I mean, I'm really pleased to be contributing to all areas of the trust work. I'm going to be supporting Cat Law, who's our other co-chair, on broadcast issues and kick-off times, which I feel quite strongly about. I mean, a lot of the focus on inconvenient times, the focus is quite rightly on away fans affected, and like the scheduling of the Liverpool away game is like a case in point. But home fans are also affected. I think the broadcasting authorities don't seem to realise that not all fans live around the corner. And actually even non-match going fans are affected. You know, even those watching on TV, they want some certainty. We all have to organise our lives around football, and it's difficult to know that when stuff's getting moved at really short notice. Also going to be part of the trust team that's working on government and governance and fan engagement issues, and supporting Steve and Rachel on anti-discrimination issues as well.
Brilliant. Thank you, Koonal. Well, welcome to obviously both of you, Koonal and Steve, to this podcast. Thanks for taking the time to join us. And two things there. One thing is that Martin Jol season. I remember how badly it started and how well it ended with Jack Santini. If there was a waiting list, Jack Santini would have cleared that waiting list, wouldn't he, with his style of football. Although, was it Timothy Atuba scoring the goal against Newcastle? That was worth it. Just that one game and one goal. And and on the, I know we'll talk about kickoff times, but it's also, you know, as I'm married with 3 kids, you know, it's like 7:45 for a Saturday kickoff. It's just it's just appalling, isn't it? You know, what happened to sort of Saturday nights with the family? I was actually thinking, I can't remember this season going to White Hart Lane as a season ticket holder on a 3 o'clock on a Saturday.
No,
I don't think there's been on for a couple of years.
I mean, you have taken the precaution, Martin, as I have, of making sure your kids are all Spurs fans, of course, which does help a bit. But
absolutely, well, my kids don't get it. To say all three boys, 3 Spurs fans. You can't change your family, can't change your football team.
So actually, the Leicester home match is down as a Saturday 3 p.m. But there is a chance it'll get moved depending on Leicester's participation in the Conference League. So actually, nothing to do with broadcasting. There we go. We'll see if that stays at that time.
And of course, there's been another thing, a really big one for us, I think, particularly, not about kickoff times necessarily, but about the North London derby, which of course we now know is the 12th of May. But so many people, because we were in the middle of a COVID and everything, so many people had put their tickets on Ticket Exchange because they couldn't make the original date. Sold their tickets, of course, and then now, because Arsenal were allowed to cancel that game, which was completely outrageous, they now can't go to the rescheduled event date, which is right, because obviously the people who've bought them have bought those tickets, but is absolutely unfair on the people who can't now go. So if you're one of those people, we are working with the club at the moment on that one. And they are very mindful of how unfair this is. And, watch this space, because they are trying to sort something out. We're pressuring them to do that, so that the people who have sold on Ticket Exchange will be supported as much as possible to be the first people to get their hands on any other tickets that come up. But it's a work in progress.
Which is good news, isn't it? And you'd hope, you don't hope, obviously, because Thursday night's not ideal for people, but you'd imagine there may well be some fans who can't now make it, and hopefully, by the sounds of it, that's going to be offered to the people who put their tickets on Ticket Exchange first, which would be the ideal solution, I guess, wouldn't it?
Yeah, we hope so.
We hope, yeah. So,
yeah.
No, not that's.
It's a work in progress, but it's definitely that's what we're aiming for.
Yeah, who would have thought you could call a game off with one COVID case just because you've sold some midfielders and you've got some players away on African Cup of Nations? Some clubs get away with it.
And Xhaka have been sent off. Who'd have anticipated that?
Yes, yeah.
Let's be honest. It's more of a surprise when Xhaka's not suspended, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Let's be honest. And moving on, because
we won't go into the fact that we got kicked out of a European tournament for COVID. How is it always us?
It's ridiculous, isn't it? It is ridiculous. And although there is a part of me that is, if Xhaka's playing left back against us, that'd be quite nice. I could see a red card before the 25th minute. Anyway, moving on. That's worth a bet, isn't it? But let's move on to the fan-led review update, because I think that's where we should go before I talk about that lot down the road too much. So there's a few of us that we've all got different areas of work that we're working in, but it's a really important. Some of the things we've just been talking about, obviously the issues that affect fans. So it's so important for us to have this fan-led review update. And Steve, you can, I guess, tell us how this all started and where we are now, I guess, in terms of moving this forward.
Well, of course, it was. I just checked back in my diary, and it was almost exactly a year ago, wasn't it? That it was April of last year. The European Super League, it was a leak or announcement or whatever it was, involving Spurs and 5 other English clubs, and the quite justified absolute outrage there was at the thought of a breakaway league, which would wreck participation in domestic leagues, which wasn't based on sporting merit, which was a closed shop on a permanent basis. And it's right to say, of course, where our club had repeatedly told the trust in meetings that there were no discussions going on in which they were participating around the European Super League. So a complete outrage across the board from all football fans, unity amongst fans of clubs who are rivals on the pitch, but the fans all shared a view on this. And actually that outrage mobilized not just football fans, but politicians as well, some of whom I think were genuinely outraged from the start. Others, I think, just saw the way the wind was blowing. And Cat Law, as our co-chair, but also very well regarded by other football supporters organisations, was involved in meetings with the Prime Minister and the leader of the opposition around the issue, and a very strong groundswell, which led to the matter being pushed in Parliament, the Prime Minister confirming that there would be a fan-led review into football, which actually is something that had been promised for some time, but the government hadn't got round to doing it. The opposition had been calling for it. It was this that was then the catalyst for the review to be started, led by Tracy Crouch, who, of course, well-respected football fan and Spurs fan, and well knowledgeable and well-respected on the issue. And that review was commenced back in the spring of last year. The European Super League, as we know, collapsed anyway within a couple of days, but the issues haven't gone away, and we've seen some of that. I know it's touched on in the newsletter around the reform of so-called reform of European club competition. But what it did show, it raised these issues of football governance, football ownership, the fact that football clubs should be community assets, that current owners of football clubs should be custodians of those clubs for the future, not just to use as their own playthings. And we've seen clubs like Bury go to the wall, Derby, the situation there, and obviously more recently what's gone on with Chelsea as well. So that was the start of it, which then led to the Tracy Crouch review, which reported in November of last year. And I think, Rachel, you're picking up on the recommendations of that review.
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, we were in the well, really quite an important position in that we were one of the trusts who gave evidence to the review. It was a really it was a new experience for me. I've been to Parliament before, but not to sort of present evidence, and it was we put a lot of thought into what we were going to say, and we wanted to be measured, but we had to know that what we were saying would preempt and would stop that Super League situation happening again. There was no point making changes if that could still happen. So we gave evidence, and they didn't have that many questions to ask us, and we were sort of thinking, have they liked what they heard, or have we just been so impressive that we've answered all their questions for them? But it turned out that actually, we see what they have come up with as an opportunity to transform the English game. And the report really embeds the principle that supporters do matter and that they need to be heard. So the main things that they have come up with, which now, of course, we need to get into a Queen's speech and be made law. First of all, that the government should appoint an independent regulator for English football, which has the rather wonderful acronym of IREF. So that person would basically be a specialist, would make sure that business regulation was applied to the football industry, but acknowledging the fact that it is also a sport and a community asset. But it is business. We can't just sort of say, but this is, football's different. It is different, but it's also mega serious money, and therefore it's got to be regulated properly with a licensing system. We've got to be able to ensure financial sustainability for the professional game, including very strict financial regulation, which is overseen by the IREF. The current director and owner tests, there's 3 of them, and yet they still aren't fit for purpose, basically, are they? We can see examples recently of how that hasn't worked. But the recommendations of the review are that there should be one much stronger test that the IREF would look over, would supervise and make sure that the clubs remain vitally important community and cultural assets, and that there would also be a new corporate governance code that would be mandatory and would be reported on, that equality, diversity and inclusion would be at the heart of clubs, that they would all have to do a plan every year, and that again would be overseen by the IREF. But the bit that sort of obviously we're really especially pleased about are that they recognise the importance of supporters as the major stakeholder, that they had to be consulted at least in taking key decisions with a shadow board, and Steve's going to talk more about what that might look like. But also that as well as being consulted, that there are certain issues where there has to be a golden share. And these were terms that we were using in our presentation. So, for example, the obvious things like where you play, what competitions you play in, what colours you wear, the name of your club, all of those sort of issues supporters would have a golden share. So the clubs could not change them. And that's the bit that would stop a club joining the European Super League. There's other recommendations also to include women's football in this, and for it to be across the whole football pyramid, with the Premier League supporting the lower leagues and sort of having proportionate amounts of regulation that would work for each of those different leagues. So there was a lot there, but there was a lot that was very encouraging news if it gets to be law.
Thanks, Rachel. And Steve, we were going to come to you next, just in terms of the dialogue with THST to agree ways forward and sort of propose models.
Yes, that's right. And Rachel's quite right to highlight that we'd said from the outset, and in fact, we had a meeting with the Tottenham board around about April and May of last year, after the initial proposals, when they come out with some suggestions on how consultation might work at the club. And we made the point to Daniel Levy that if what they're proposing wouldn't have required them to consult with fans about a European Super League and therefore wouldn't have stopped it, then those proposals simply wouldn't work. And we made the same point, as Rachel has said, to Tracy Crouch. And I suppose that's our fundamental measure of whether the proposals work or not. But we have had some constructive discussions with the club since the review report came out, the recommendations in November. Discussions around, the club are still calling it an advisory panel, and we want it to be called a shadow board or a supporter board. The club have committed to including it into their own constitution, their articles of association of the company, which is important. And our focus on the discussions has been around the remit. Well, what does it actually cover, and has it got real teeth? Because if it's not got real teeth, then again, just a talking shop, just a sounding board is not going to help. We would have liked actually Tracy Crouch's recommendations to include a fan director on the main board of the club, but that hasn't been proposed. So we're working with what we've got, but we are discussing with the club that a representative from the shadow board, from the supporter board, would attend main board meetings as well. So we've been talking about the remit, talking about the powers. We've been talking about the composition of the board, which groups will be represented, making sure that fan groups are represented, that diversity is reflected, that the trust has a proper degree of representation on there, but also that it articulates and links in with existing channels of discussion. It's not intended to replace supporters' trusts, which are properly constituted, democratic organisations, community benefit societies. That dialogue on those important issues that we deal with as a trust should continue. This is an additional layer of fan engagement, and it must, as Rachel has said, also link in with this holding of the golden share, which would mean if a club decided that they were no longer wanting to play in Tottenham, but to play in Stratford, for example, they would have to consult with the fans, and the golden share would be exercised, and fans would have, through a voting procedure involving the trust, an opportunity of veto. So that needs to link in. I should say, the club did say, I thought rather amusingly, don't worry, we've got no plans to move the ground again, which I think was a fair point and nicely put. But, you know, these are important issues. And of course, we're in the fortunate position now, but there are plenty of other clubs who have got issues around where they would be playing, as well as fundamental issues around the nature of the ownership of the club. So very, very important issues, ongoing discussions with the club. They are committed, I think, to taking it forward with us. We don't agree on all issues, but it's been a constructive dialogue. Now, on the political side, the independent regulator, the IREF that Rachel referred to, that does need legislation. It needs acts of parliament to be implemented. The government has said that it will legislate. It supports an independent regulator, and the Prime Minister confirmed that in response to a question that Prime Minister's questions a couple of weeks ago. The Sports Minister said the same. But what we're pressing for is that it should be included in the Queen's speech on the 10th of May, which is the programme of legislation for this current period of 2022 and 2023. And that's why, as people will have seen in the newsletter, we encouraged, with linking in with the Football Supporters Association, we encouraged our members to write to their MPs and say, please would you as an MP, whichever party you're from, put pressure on the government to bring this legislation forward in the Queen's speech and get on with it, because Tracy Crouch herself has said that it's urgent. Now, we've had very positive replies. The replies we've had from opposition politicians, from Labour politicians, are saying, yep, we think it should be in the Queen's speech now and get on with it. The replies from Conservative MPs have also been supportive, but not so much with a timetable. And that, I think, is reflected in what many of you may have seen. There was a piece reported yesterday that Nadine Dorris, who's the Secretary of State for Culture, Media and Sport, which covers this area, the Financial Times was reporting that she's written to the Prime Minister to say, yes, there should be legislation for an independent regulator, but she's saying it shouldn't be until 2024 before there's a general election, that they need a white paper and further consultation, that they're committed to a regulator, but it's not going to be in this 2022-23 period. Now, that is disappointing if it's true, and surprising because, in a sense, the consultation, the work, the review was done by the review that started a year ago. and the report was in November. So why do we need to wait so long, particularly when we know that the football authorities are pushing back against this? So the Football Association are saying we don't want an independent regulator. The Premier League is saying the same. There's rumours about what the clubs are saying around the owners' charter. So we're going to keep pressing, and I know politicians will keep pressing for the government to get on with this. But the signs at the moment aren't particularly encouraging. Yes, it's good. There will be a regulator, but of course, anything can happen between now and 2024. Many clubs could face going to the wall or dodgy owners or whatever. So I think we need to keep the pressure up along with other trusts on this.
Thanks, Steve. And Koonal, I guess current events with what's going on, what happened at Stamford Bridge to Chelsea really highlights the need for this this fan-led review to go ahead, for it to actually have teeth. Steve said to actually have teeth, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, there's a lot we can learn about what's happened to other clubs. You know, some of those issues that Rachel mentioned, we've seen this happen. We've seen the old Wimbledon move to a different city and adopt a new identity. Granted, that's unlikely to happen to Spurs in the short term, but then we've seen Cardiff change their colours from blue to red, albeit a move that was eventually reversed. Seen clubs sell their stadiums, and then we've seen our own club and others try to change the competitions it plays in via the European Super League. So these are like really important heritage issues that should be subject to support consent. So with Chelsea, I mean, at the time of recording, there's still uncertainty about the ownership, but we've seen Chelsea supporters express major concerns about some of the bidders in contention. And I guess whatever you think about Chelsea, I think we'd all be very concerned if Spurs were faced with the prospect of being taken over by a group that we didn't feel shared the values of the supporters, or where we had serious reservations about their intentions. So I think it's clear that, you know, clubs are important cultural and community institutions, and they need protecting. And football's repeatedly shown that it won't self-regulate and provide clubs with the protection that they need. So it's really important that the recommendations of the fan-led review report are implemented in full and given some teeth via government legislation.
Thank you very much. So if there's anybody listening or watching this at home, Steve, and they're wondering what can I do to help support this campaign, what is on offer to them? How can people get more involved in this campaign?
Well, please do write to your MP. Write to your own MP, giving your address so they know that you're one of their constituents, which means that they will then respond to you. We've produced a template that you can use, which is on our website. There's a link to it. You can adapt it for your own personal experience. And you know, MPs they do look at their correspondence, they do reply to it, and they do take notice of it. And that will be something that I know is pushed on in Parliament. It's clear that it's having some impact, and we're seeing that the Secretary of State is writing about it. So do continue that pressure. But I think it's important that we just continue to raise the issue as well, and to raise it publicly as we do on a number of fronts, because you know, every week it seems we're reminded of the importance of the ownership of football and the governance of football. And it sounds very dry and it sounds very dull. But actually, if you've not got those proper structures in place and those protections, then you do get clubs run. I mean, the owner of Derby, Mel Morris, had said, according to Tracy Crouch, he'd said to her, if this had been in place, then what had happened at Derby wouldn't have happened. I mean, is that fundamental? You know, clubs like Bury have gone to the wall. And you may think, well, why should we care who owns our club? But we do, because it affects the club and how it is standing and how it's run. And it may affect, you know, whether it's financially viable or whether it goes plummeting down the leagues. Not so talking about Tottenham here, but other clubs which have overspent and collapsed as a result of that. So it is fundamentally important. And it's you know, some people say, well, no, you keep, this is all politics and keep politics out of it. But you know, well, laws are made by politicians in order to regulate behaviour, in order to protect people and to safeguard things. And you can't keep that out of it. And it is right that actually government does take an interest in this, because as Koonal says quite rightly, football has been very, very bad at regulating itself. And we don't want to give this away. We don't want to give these community assets away.
No, very, very important. Thank you very much for that.
You know, there's a related point. I'm going to take us too far off the issue, but topically, because of the action on Sunday, coordinated by Proud Lily-Whites around human rights in Saudi Arabia and the rights of LGBT people in Saudi Arabia, who have no rights and actually are persecuted in that country. And we supported, I'm very proud to support the Proud Lily-Whites action. A number of us were there as well at the time. And the Trust got a lot of stick for that on social media. Well, why are you getting involved with politics? What's it got to do with you? What's it got to do with the Trust? Why keep politics out of sport, keep politics out of football? But I think that the fact of the matter is that a number of nation states or oligarchs or other organizations buy sports clubs or win bids for sporting competitions because they want to sanitize their reputation. They want to launder their reputation, if you like, and to try and improve their standing in the world. And it's only right that if that is the case, that if a club is ultimately owned by the Saudi Arabian government through a public investment fund, and there are outrages committed by that government against people's human rights, that is something that we draw attention to. We're not having a go at Newcastle as a football team or their fans, but we are drawing attention to the fact that an organisation is seeking to use sport for its own ends, and it's right in those circumstances that we raise the issue. And you know, a similar thing is true. A number of organisations have been involved in protests around the situation in Qatar, which again has got the rights for the World Cup in order to try and improve the standing of Qatar. Well, okay, it raises the profile of Qatar. It's only right and proper, I think, in those circumstances, that people should be able to say, as Gareth Southgate has said, as Harry Kane has said, well, hang on, what about the rights of LGBT people and other groups in Qatar? You know, what about the rights of migrant workers in Qatar? If you want to have the World Cup, it's only right that we are able to respond to that. And I think for people to turn around and say, you're being political or we're being political, when in fact we're responding to organisations who are using football for their own political lens. So I think that's the context that I would put that into. And it comes back to, again, I think, who do we want to be owning football clubs? Who do we want to be holding sporting events? And I think that is something which rightly the public, nationally, internationally, have a view on, and they should do.
Yeah, well said.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. Brings us on nicely to the next point that we're going to talk to, which is reform to European competitions, which is another interesting one in light of the European Super League, and that is that you know, I'm sure a lot of Spurs fans, along with us, read in horror the press reports that that Spurs had potentially been one of the 6 Premier League clubs, I wonder which 6 they were, to oppose an owner's charter on the basis that it involved signing up to a commitment to participate in competitions based on sporting merit only. So we wrote to the club for clarification on that. And you know, the rumours around this reform included plans to include clubs in European competition on the basis of a historic coefficient. You know, that was the strong rumour, wasn't it? So if you had a good coefficient, you would sneak into the European competition, a bit like being in a European Super League that you can't be relegated from. You know, all sounds very familiar, doesn't it?
A bit like loyalty points as well for tickets.
A bit like loyalty points that can't be relinquished. But sadly, loyalty points that don't get taken away, as Steve alluded to earlier. So it's like not going to any away games, but still getting the loyalty points. Yeah. I guess having your cake and eating it sounds a little bit like. So we asked the club to confirm its stance on the issue, obviously reminding it of the opposition's qualification for competition on criteria other than sporting merit, and that's so important to football fans, so integral. You know, we spent years chasing the Champions League dream, didn't we? And we got there. And what a night that was at the Etihad, or you know, I can't remember what the stadium was called back then. And Peter Crouch's header, and those great nights, win or lose, just being in the Champions League at White Hart Lane, then at Wembley, and then at our stadium. And the thought of taking that away from other clubs it will never sit well with any football fan. I don't think
because we earned it.
Exactly.
You don't want to, at any level of football, whether it's you know, my kids playing football, they don't want to be playing in a league that they can't be relegated from or that they can't get promoted from. It's just, and owners have to understand that. So the club, when we wrote it, was unable to confirm its stance and told us instead to contact the Premier League. We've asked the Premier League to confirm what the club's stance was. A bit strange, and we await a response. And one of the things we said in our newsletter actually was the inability to get a straight answer on this is yet further evidence of the kind of governance and reform that we've just been talking about. And this issue in particular is so important to us because our chairman Daniel Levy is a member of the executive, is an executive member, sorry, of the European Club Association, which is pushing for changes to Champions League format that would see more games played. And you know, there's something about it, isn't there? There's something about, I remember talking with some mates years ago about how wouldn't it be nice to, why did they change the Champions League? Why couldn't we just have the European Cup, the UEFA Cup and the Cup Winners' Cup? And why do we need now more games in the Champions League and more games in Europa? And now we've got the Conference League. You know, if it's not broke, don't fix it. And it seemed to always be going in a way that football fans are never really entirely comfortable with. So we've said, we've made it clear, football fans have made their feelings also very clear on these issues, and we'll continue to push for our clubs to accurately represent fans' views, because it is one of those things that it does leave a sour taste when football fans have been so clear on matters like this. And you know, we want competition. I want to see the club doing well in a competition that we deserve to be in, you know, not one that we're in because we see ourselves as a bigger club, or one that we think we deserve to be in because we had a good run in Europe a few years ago. It just seems odd. So that's where we are on the reform to European competitions. So we'll see how that goes, but it ties in very well with what we've just been saying about the fan-led review and European Super League. Continuing on that theme of discussions we've had with the club, one that we've probably had the most feedback on from our members and Spurs fans generally in the last month has been season ticket renewals and the date and the club's response to a letter that we sent. And Rob's going to tell us more about that. Over to you, Rob.
Yeah, I think basically the club's response is actually another example of why we need the governance reforms that we're pushing for, really, because this was a prime example of the club telling us that they were pushing forward season ticket renewals, which we'll all be aware of by now, but which is now April the 29th. So we had discussions with the club. We joined with the Proud Leader Whites and the Spurs Ability group and wrote a letter to the club. The letter is on our website, but we were effectively outlining a good set of reasons why they should reconsider, especially at this time with people, the uncertainty in the world, rising inflation, rising fuel prices, rising national insurance costs, all of these things. And we were trying to get to the bottom of a clear reason why the club decided they wanted to push the renewal date forward to April the 29th. Sadly, we didn't really get any sort of balanced reply. It was almost a case of, well, yeah, we've read your letter, thanks for your letter, but actually we're not going to take any of those points on board. And I must say, I felt they really missed the trick on this, not for the first time in their lives, but I don't understand what would have been the problem. And this is just my personal view. I really don't understand. I think the simple thing would have been to say, and to almost come across and say, okay, this is something where the fans can help us out. If you want to renew as soon as possible, then please do so. And this is what I don't understand. If you want to renew as soon as possible, yes, do so. That helps us. They could have listed a whole raft of reasons why that helps us as a club. And if there are people out there that feel they want to be more connected to the club and give their money to the club earlier, then fantastic. But they could have, as we were suggesting, kept the deadline, the renewal dates where they were. And that would have given the individuals a choice. We weren't saying that people that were renewing early were terrible. You know, if you want to be more of a proactive member of the club, then absolutely fine. But actually, again, the exchange, the last letter back from the club is again on our website. And sadly, they really didn't take any notice, and I'm confused really as a fan. Be interested just to quickly hear what you guys think of that.
Yeah, I mean, for me, they used the renewal and then the seat reallocation as an excuse.
Yeah.
And yet it's been automated this year. So actually in the past, I think their ticket office customer service is fantastic, and they used to phone everybody up that wanted to move seats and go through their situation. And yes, you can imagine it takes time. And I think the season's starting slightly earlier. So you'd want to be able to move as many people that wanted to move as possible. But given that it's an automated system where everyone can just go on and click the seat that they want, that just doesn't hold water. Why didn't they say also, if you want to, we hope you'll renew, but the deadline will be the same, but you could pay a 20% deposit, for example, then show that you are committed, but it would still give you time. It's a terrible time to be doing this to people.
The club's response also suggested that it would be unfair to make a change at this stage, but obviously, if they'd consulted supporters beforehand, they could have avoided what is clearly a very unfair position for lots of supporters.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right, and so many people are really struggling at the moment, and it hits them very hard. But also, I think people are then rather mistrustful. Well, if you want us to commit by the 29th of April, what's going to happen after that you don't want us to know about? Say a lot of people, why commit that early when the season doesn't finish till 22nd of May, I think, isn't it? It just doesn't seem right to have to have signed up fully so long before the end of the season.
Yeah, and also I don't think it's. I mean, I go with two boys, and there's 3 of us in total. So I'm buying 3 season tickets, and I think for parents as well, it's if you're buying more than 1 season ticket, and it's just that short window, doing it so early, there's just no thought for that. And we want to be inspiring the next generation of supporters as well. We want fans. My sons are 17 and 15. They've been season ticket holders for a few years. We want to continue that going, and there will be. Luckily, I'm in a position where I can afford that. But there will be some parents who need more time, who need longer periods of time, more pay, more salaries in whatever it is. The club should be helping these loyal supporters and ensuring that they can afford to get those tickets in the best way possible. I just think it's left a bad taste in the mouth, and you can see that across the board with the way supporters are talking about it. And sadly, the response, I think the killer for me, and it might not be, I hope the club does care, I really do, but that response just makes it sound like it doesn't. And I think that's the issue for me. And if anyone at the club watching this,
absolutely, but it means that no one is talking about the fact they've frozen the prices.
Yeah,
absolutely.
The positive side has got lost.
Well, we were quite clear on all of our communications to thank the club for freezing prices. So you're right. It's so short-sighted. I don't understand it at all. The only illumination into it is I had a friend over recently who was his family have historically been Dallas Cowboys season ticket holders, and they're not anymore because they just can't afford it. And we all know, how influenced Mr. Levy is by Jerry Jones.
That's how much one of those season tickets is?
Sorry?
Do you know roughly how much?
I can't remember. I'll find out and I'll report back. They've gone up unbelievably in the last 20 or 25 years.
Probably not as much as Spurs season tickets.
And here's a common theme amongst the things we've been talking around having World Cups in Qatar, or having European competitions that are meaningless, or having season ticket renewals that people can't renew. People are going to stop going, and people have got out the habit of going to games as regularly because of the pandemic, and now they're affected by the cost. Now, the club will say there will always be people who will take the tickets on, and I'm sure that's right. But you will lose full stadia, you will lose the atmosphere, you will lose people going to games. And if it all becomes about a product on TV, well, people don't want to watch games on TV with no crowd there or no crowd atmosphere there. So it's a real danger, not just directing this at Tottenham, but more broadly, of just killing the golden goose here, you know?
Yeah, absolutely, and we've seen it happen so many times as well. I know people who've said similar things about their club. They just fell out of love with it, the owners and the football being played. And some people have said about internationals. You know, people used to go to a lot more international football. They're just, the interest just isn't there. You know, so it's so important that fans feel involved and thought about, isn't it? It's such an important aspect of why you're drawn to a club and why you stay affiliated with that club. And I think club owners really need to take notice of that. As you say, people didn't go to games for 2 years or however long during the pandemic, and for a lot of us, we couldn't wait to get back, obviously. Yeah. But for a large number, people thought, actually, I can watch games on TV. I can be a member rather than a season ticket holder, and vice versa. So it's one for the clubs to be aware of.
Yeah, absolutely.
So moving on, sorry, to the next update, just to get through our agenda, is the online safety bill, which is my update. It's interesting actually, because I guess one of the other things we've seen in general life and through pandemic and recently is this, you know, God, we get it, don't we? We get a lot of abuse on our Twitter page sometimes, which you know, if you're being horrible on Twitter, stop being horrible on Twitter. Be nice, you know. You're not. It's not tough and it's not hard. You know, just be friendly and be respectful. But we also see a lot of abuse of players and fans via social media. So that's why supporter organisations are backing changes to the law. For those that don't know, the online safety bill was introduced in Parliament by government on 17th of March this year, and will now go through the various stages of parliamentary scrutiny before it's passed into law. And it covers social media platforms and search engine providers, and gives new powers to Ofcom to act as a safety regulator. Really important, because I think it's so important that people realise that, you know, when you're being tough and hard down, you know, a keyboard warrior, to the victim, it can feel very different to how you intend it. And you know, there's no hiding place these days. You know, it's so good to see. You know, we had a podcast, didn't we, on mental health awareness, and it's great to see a rise in or an increase in the awareness of mental health concerns, because some people just don't see the damage it could do to players, to other people, to fans, to constantly be on their back. So the new duties of care on social media platforms and search engine providers include assessing their user base and the risk of harm to users, taking steps to mitigate and manage risks of harm, and putting in place systems and processes for reporting a complaints procedure. So really good news. And the bill includes new offences of harmful communications, false communications, threatening communications. So I think things that any person, any law-abiding person would agree with. You know, again, if maybe the people that used to think it was banter 10 years ago, hopefully they've grown out of that now and see there is actually a danger to continuing down that path. And the legislation will place obligations on social media companies to deal with illegal content and illegal but harmful content as well. So good news. And we as a trust feel it's important that social media platforms are placed under strong legal obligations to prevent and tackle illegal and discriminatory posts, and to protect users from facing online hate and abuse. Who would disagree? You know, I can remember Danny Rose. I'm talking about footballers. Obviously, we're talking about fans as well and other people. But you know, we can remember Danny Rose having ridiculous levels of social media abuse. Musa Sissoko, and players that turned the corner. And I think they always say that when they felt that the barrage of abuse on social media stopped, they started to, you know, their confidence increased. And you know, we can all think what we like when we're in the stadium about someone's performance, but then berating them on social media really is the coward's way out. Why would you not support them when you support that club? Because surely you want them to do better. So it's something we're really on board with. And there's a really, you know, there's an online safety bill update on our newsletter, so please do check that out if it's something you feel as passionately as we do. So worth having a look at. On to our regular catering survey, catering update, which is Rachel's area. It's always a good time for me to say on Sunday I did enjoy many pints of neck oil again, if anyone from town is listening. Other beers are obviously available, but over to you, Rachel.
Yes, I must say I enjoyed a nice pint of neck oil as well.
Well, as we said on Sunday, it was neck oil 5, Saudi oil 1.
Yes, nice.
Very good. So thank you to everybody who's completed the surveys, which we collate each month, and then we present the main findings to the team at Tottenham. And I also deal with quite a big postbag, well, not postbag, email of people with feedback. And obviously, normally when people write in, it's because something has gone wrong. And I'm able to sort of introduce them to the head of catering, and sometimes we're able to sort it out. I can't obviously solve every situation that comes up. So, for example, if you're saying, you know, why can't I get a hot drink after the match in the west or east stands? All I can do is pass the feedback on. I can't actually solve that. But unfortunately, I had to cancel the meeting, the face-to-face. We were going to have a face-to-face at the club. It was going to be so lovely after 2 years. And then I caught COVID, which was, you know, the first time for me. And I was really a bit gutted that I'd caught it, because I'd managed to not up until that point. But we've got another meeting scheduled for April, end of April. And we've collated, you know, we've got another survey out at the moment, lots and lots of data. But the big one that we're really going to be pushing for next season is bring back the pie and pint. And I'm sure that everybody would endorse that. But we put that on the survey, and it had a very, very overwhelming vote of support. So watch this space.
Rightly so. Pie and a pint, can't beat it. I should say on this as well, I take my hats off to the staff at the ground at the stadium, because they work. They're very quick. You know, you see the big queues and you see how quickly you think the queues go down. But I would say this to any fan: be nice, because I was behind someone in a queue on Sunday, and so rude and horrible. Just these people are trying to do their job. He ordered a margarita pizza, and when he got one, claimed he'd ordered the Hotspur pizza, and I had to, and he was so rude, and I had to step, and I stepped in and said, "No, I heard you order the margarita pizza."
Oh, well done.
And because just be nice, just say I made a mistake. You know, don't be horrible to these people. They're working as hard as they can, and they're really good. And if you're nice, they recognise you, and they bring you a pint over before you do your order.
But the other thing is that if you're rude, people, and it's really, really hard to recruit staff to the service industry at the moment. We all know that. You know, go to pubs, restaurants, everyone's got vacancies. People don't come back. They'll just go and deliver for Deliveroo or other companies that are available. You know, if you're horrible to the staff, why would they come back?
Yeah, absolutely. Do you remember, Rachel? And I probably shouldn't bring this up, but do you remember I had a pint and there was in a reusable glass, and there was a bit of chewing gum in it. I had chewing gum in my pint, which wasn't my chewing gum. I still finished my pint because I'm hardcore. And I raised it next door, and the club contacted me. The catering manager.
Yeah, it was Ray, wasn't it?
But the lady who I showed it to poured me a new pint, and I'd finished it. I wasn't expecting one. I said, "Don't worry." And she said, "I'm going to pour you one." And she was like, and she actually said, "Oh, thank you for not biting my head off." And she was just a lady serving at the thing. And I said, "Well, you didn't put the chewing gum in there, did you?" And she went, "No." And I said, I said, "Well, why? So why would I blame you?" And it's just that sometimes it's just that mentality, isn't it? I don't know why people want to always have a go. You know, it probably ties in with the online safety bill update as well. Just, you know, we're better when we're nice, aren't we? You know, and it makes everyone feel happy. Anyway, sorry, I'm getting far too. Maybe I haven't had any beer tonight, so but that's not. I'm not drunk, so I'm just being nice. Just a nice guy.
But it's the same sort of thing with the online safety that you were saying about. Why would you, if you're criticising Danny Rose, let's say, why would you at Danny Rose into that conversation, which is what some people do? It's the same thing. It's just be nice. Don't tell them to their face. Just moan if you want to. Yeah,
we were talking about this off camera before we started recording. That I've been, you know, I've had my issues with Emerson Royale, and, you know, and I'm sure we all have with some of his guys. Do you know, he was great on Sunday, and nothing gives me more pleasure than to see him score and see the joy on his face, like anyone, you know. And I remember last season we were talking about when Jose was in charge, and the amount, the pressure that our defenders were under because of the way we used to the way we defended under Jose, and any, you know, Van Dijk and whoever would have been under the same kind of pressure. But the abuse that Eric Dyer and Sanchez used to stun me, because particularly Eric Dyer, who'd been here for so long and been such a stalwart. And I love them. I love the man. I mean, I'm so pleased to see him do. And I loved him when Josie was here, and I used to stand there and sing, I love Eric Dyer on my own, and I didn't care. But it's so nice to see these players getting the respect they deserve. But also, why don't people realise sometimes tactics are an issue? Sometimes there's something going on behind the scenes, and yeah, players can have a bad game, and fans should have the right to say that and disagree. But also, I'm just very much a believer that slating them will never improve their performance. Get behind them and let them know you're with them in the bad and the dark days as well, and you'll see a player that will run through brick walls for you, as we do with someone like Eric Dyer. You know, so it's just. I don't know. I don't want to be like other fans down the road, you know, that I used to always look at when they were in the Champions League and they were booing certain players, you know, 10 years ago, and I think, oh God, you lot don't know you're born, you know. Don't want to be like that. I want us to be, we're different. We're above all that. Anyway, maybe I should move on. So on to something completely different, and also, you know, again, this really puts everything into perspective in terms of what's going on in Ukraine at the moment, and thoughts and prayers, obviously, with everybody in Ukraine at this current time, and it puts all of our problems and our gripes into perspective, certainly. And you know, nothing's more important than the safety of civilians in Ukraine at the moment, and it does put football into perspective. But football is doing a lot in raising awareness for Ukraine, and Koonal, you're going to talk to us now about the support for Ukraine, the stadium, and ways that supporters can donate to support refugees.
Yeah, well, this is one of those cases where it's impossible to separate politics and football. So I mean, the trust had asked the club about whether it had any commercial relationships with sanctioned entities, and the club had confirmed that it had appropriate compliance checks in place. Obviously, don't know the details of that, and hadn't found any evidence of sanctioned entities amongst its sponsors or suppliers. And then we received a lot of messages from trust members asking about the club's plans to show support for the people of Ukraine. So we put that question to the club. That was ahead of the home match against Everton. And for those who did get to that game early, would have seen the stadium lit up in blue and yellow, and then also a sort of musical performance by a local young people's choir. Also worth noting that in that game, and then also in the subsequent home games, so the introduction of Ukrainian opposition players, so Mikolenko for Everton and Yarmolenko of West Ham, led to polite support applause from Spurs fans. So I think, you know, football fans do sometimes understand when it's time to put rivalry aside for a common cause. If our members are able to contribute personally, there's plenty of charities and other ways of donating to humanitarian relief efforts. One option's the Disasters Emergency Committee, or DEC. So they've got a Ukraine humanitarian appeal that can be found at dec.org.uk.
Brilliant, thank you, Koonal. And yeah, massive respect to all Spurs fans for the respect, and to the Yarmolenko in particular, because it was lovely to see, wasn't it?
Yes.
It's so important that we support that. God knows what's going through players' minds at this time if they've got family in Ukraine, and you know, it's wonderful to see the football family sort of throwing an arm around them, which it's great. Speaking of on the pitch matters, people may have seen our Rob White was on the pitch. You know, shortly after meeting Ledley King at the with the oh God, I forgot what it was called, the mural, wasn't it?
The mural. Can you forget that?
About. Shortly after seeing Ledley King there, you were on the pitch, weren't you, Rob? Accepting a gift from Marine. If you to put it into context, so go back a year, we had the Marine Cup tie. We did all we could to support Marine in terms of obviously there was a limited crowd, and it was great. The football fans sort of came together, didn't we? And we've got a relationship with Marine now. It seems to be, I think it will go on for years. And we had a guy from Marine on our podcast, the vice chair, and then I went on the Marine podcast. It was just a mutual loving, which was great, and it continues, Rob.
It does indeed, yeah, and interesting. You've just been talking about the power of community of football when it comes together, which is massively highlighted by the difference that the money that we helped to raise through that our supporters, Spurs supporters, helped to raise through that FA Cup tie, the difference that's made to Marine FC basically. So a couple of weeks ago, a guy called Adam Adam Bretherton was down here, and he brought down I've got it here actually. That's it. You can't actually see it. Doesn't actually doesn't translate very well.
A trophy.
But it's on its way to the Antwerp Arms, and it reads, "For supporters of Tottenham Hotspur FC, on behalf of the Crossender Way," and it's FA Cup third round, 10th of January 2021. So Crossender Way is it's one of the Marine FC supporters groups, and this chap was down. Had a really nice chat with him pitch side about the difference that money has made, and all the details of it are sort of, they're on the website, on our website, in the newsletter. But the bottom line, which really impressed me, was he said that as far as he was concerned, that the 10-year plan for the club had more or less been achieved within the last year, 18 months, and it just means they can fast forward everything. It seems to me, from what I've heard, it seems to be a really great community club. It's made a massive difference to that area. So yeah, let's hope that relationship continues. We did talk about the fact that so they did offer free entry for Spurs season ticket holders this season, but obviously with one thing or another, it's been difficult. So actually, I think there was talk of trying to work a day, maybe the Everton game next year or the Liverpool game, where the same, if people are up for the weekend, they might be able to go and see Marine FC. But I think it's only a tenner to get in, so actually, we're probably as well just paying and going for it. But yeah, it's a nice story, one that we should continue.
Brilliant, absolutely. Well, if we're going to Anfield, obviously, if you get up to Anfield early for a 7:45 kickoff and you've got a few hours to kill, you can always pop into Marine, can't you? I'm sure Marine's kickoff times aren't going to be 7:45 and will be 3 o'clock on a Saturday. Who would have thought? That's a good time to have a bloody football match, isn't it? Pardon my French. Sorry, I'll get off my soapbox now. Thank you, Rob. And last but not least is back to Rachel. For an update on our events, our social events, the biggest social events in any Tottenham supporters calendar. Over to you, Rachel.
Yeah, so I'm delighted to say that we've completely sold out now for the quiz. Can't wait. It's at the Antwerp Arms on the 20th of April. We've sold out. We've got a waiting list.
21st.
21st.
Yeah, 21st. 20th is when I've got a meeting at the club. I do apologise. But anyway, you can't come. So, of course you can. And that promises to be a fantastic night. And we've got a team coming from the club as well, including VIP, let's say. Can't wait. And then the other event that we're working on already, I hope I get the date right for this one, Sunday the 29th of May is the barbecue. So that's our end of season barbecue, where we've got another great day ahead of us there. All trust members welcome. We'll be Eventbriting that one, so you'll be able to buy your tickets. And we've got a guest of honour, Steve Perriman. So it'll be amazing to have him there. I bet none of us can wait to meet him again. And more details, we'll put that out on Twitter, obviously, and in the next newsletter as well.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. And just a reminder to everybody, obviously, everything we've spoken about is on our website, THSTofficial.com. It's all in our newsletter, so make sure you log on and have a look at the newsletter. So much information, so much work going on by the board for Tottenham Hotspur supporters. If you want to get involved, as I said, get onto our website, THSTofficial.com. Email us at info@THSTofficial.com, and please do get involved. It's so important for us to hear from our members and from Tottenham Hotspur supporters about any issues that you're suffering or anything that you want us to tackle. So we love to get that feedback, and you will get it. Some with our new board members, I have to say we are seeing a response rate that I've never seen before in terms of our info@THSTofficial.com email address. I mean, it's impressive, even for a professional organisation, let alone a voluntary. We are professional, obviously, but strictly speaking, voluntary for a voluntary operation, the speed of those emails is impressive. So please drop us a line and let us know. Reminder again, you can watch these podcasts on YouTube, so please check us out there. They're available via podcast and Spotify as always, and they are uploaded on our website as well. So please check them all out. And you can also, if this is the first time listening or watching, please go back and have a look at our previous podcasts going back more than a year, to the European Super League, to all the kinds of things. Rob falling up his stairs from behind that door behind him, which is still the podcast highlight, and my dog barking whenever I said Arsenal, which is still at the moment. Hence now he's not allowed in this room. But all that's left for me to say is thanks, Rob and Rachel, as always. Steve and Koonal, thank you so much for joining us, and for to all four of you for the work you're doing. And we will leave it there. As I said, we'll be back in a month with more details, but please do feedback with any information or any ideas for future podcasts. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you soon.
Yeah.
We'll finish obviously by saying, come on you Spurs.
On you Spurs.
Come on, you Spurs.
Come on, you Spurs.
Come on, you Spurs.